Hey guys, Dizzler Magic here with another overlooked but awesome card. I've been going through some old collections that I bought from other people and stuff like that and coming across cards that were absolutely insane. Now this card is not one of them. I did want to include it though because if you've never heard of this card, oh my gosh. Now it doesn't quite go back to Alpha and Beta, but it does go back to 6th edition, 7th edition, 8th, 9th, 10th I believe, a couple others. So it's one of those perpetual, okay, printed all the time things, but never made it into M10 onward. Now the funny thing is this effect has been put on other cards. In fact, I think one or two of them at least are legal right now. So the effect itself shouldn't be new to you, but this is like the spell. I mean, this is like going back to counter spell. This is such a basic thing, but the reason it made the OBA list is because, well, people when they build a red deck just forget that this is a thing that they can do, and in some cases you would really want to do this. If you're running like a mid-speed red deck with creatures, you should probably consider this card. And of course it is modern legal. I'm talking about Relentless Assault. This was last printed in Plane Chase, and you know it's a basic recurring good powerful card if they put it in like some kind of, particularly put together pre-built deck. So first of all, the flavor text is awesome. Mercy is for the playground, not the battleground. That is so classic red, oh my gosh. Anyway, it is a 4-cost sorcery, which, okay, that's not very red. A 1-cost boost spell is very red. But like I said, mid-range. So untap all creatures that attack this turn. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase, followed by an additional main phase. So if you attacked with an overwhelming force, you know some creatures were going to get through. You had first strike, maybe you boosted a couple with boost spells. Maybe they're flying, maybe they have trample. I mean, maybe they're just too big and your opponent was forced to block. Hit them again. It's like taking another turn, but without giving your opponent any time or any cards, any draw, any mana, no land untapping, nothing. They get no way to respond, you just straight up hit them again. And this is kind of like double casting your boost spells because your boost spells don't wear off. So if you gave somebody +3/+1 in first strike, they still have it. I mean, remember, pretty much every card like that says until end of turn. I can't think of one that says until end of combat. That's kind of weird. Now, there are two very important things to remember when taking a second combat phase within a turn. Oh, besides, like I said, boost spells keep going. Well, end abilities and pretty much anything that says until end of turn, it hasn't worn off yet. But besides that, damage has not worn off. So if your creatures took damage during the first combat, they could like block and hit you again. So if you rammed into like a 1/7 wall with like a 4/2, if they block you again, you're going to lose that creature. Now, the other thing to remember is that, no, seriously, damage doesn't wear off. So if you hit an opponent, they would also lose their wall in that case because you did 4 damage to it twice. So then it comes down to, as long as you know that, does your opponent know that? Now, you could be nice and charitable and say, hey, if you're not familiar with how this card works, damage doesn't wear off until the end of turn, which honestly is not how that card works. It's just how, the game works. But it's nice to remind them. But if you want to be not nice or you're in like a highly competitive environment, pretty simple. Just don't tell them until it's too late. Be like, hey, okay, I dealt 4 damage to you, and I dealt 4 damage to you before, so now he's out. I love dancing around certain words just for the YouTube filter. That's so much fun. So the two things to remember are that damage doesn't wear off your creatures and damage doesn't wear off their creatures until end of turn. Take advantage of that. Oh, and if you have like what they call a fire breathing ability where you just pay to pump a creature, it's until end of turn. Any kind of instant, any kind of sorcery, whatever you did to your creatures, turn them into a different creature until the end of turn, whatever, it's still there. So you get a lot for your mana, but the problem is if you have to reserve 4 mana until after combat, you better have a dirt cheap boost spell. But even without any kind of boost, like I said, a superior board state, you're just going to run them over. So if you run them over once, drive around the block and run them over again. That's right, your creatures are now Toyota Camrys, apparently. So if you're playing like an asymmetric first strike haste whoop-de-doo awesome, red rush deck, but you think you can get to 4 in a reasonable amount of time, why not throw this in? I mean, I could answer that question. There is one drawback. If you dropped in another 3/1 with haste for 2 mana, or I suppose you could say 2 of them, but that's 2 cards, this is 1 card, so let's be fair. But okay, a 3/1 with haste for for 3 mana. You drop that in during your first main phase, and boom. You swing, okay, you deal 3 more damage. Cool, you have 1 more overflow. Now you've got 5 creatures on the field and they have 3. So yeah, 5 will do you a lot better than 4, especially if they've got walls or some kind of creature that would trade. So now instead you take that out of the deck and put in Relentless Assault. Well, okay, now you're swinging again with 4 creatures instead of swinging in the first place with 5. So is that necessarily better? It depends on their board state. Now if you're running some red removal and you're running kind of medium levels of creatures instead of like 40 cards all-in creatures, yeah, I mean, you got their blockers out of the way. You are just quite literally hitting them twice. They've got somewhere between, 2 and 0 creatures probably blocking at that point. You took out the most problematic ones. So maybe they could trade, maybe they could chump block 1, but the rest are getting through. So then you do it again. Yes, in that case, it would be more. But in my other example, 3 blockers versus 4 attackers, swinging twice might not always work. Now, the other thing is get ready to sideboard out Relentless Assault if they're running removal, because without creatures, Relentless Assault does next to nothing. And for every creature that's not on the field, that used to be, it does a lot less. So if you see a high volume of creature removal or board wipes, just get rid of Relentless Assault. That said, it is still highly powerful. So hopefully you guys put it in some kind of deck. I can almost guarantee the vast majority of you have heard of this card because it's kind of famous. But the other thing to remember is some creatures have this ability. In fact, I think an Amonkhet one says you can, I don't know, it's either pay mana or exert, I don't quite remember. But you do that and then you take like another combat step, but I think the exerted one doesn't untap. I don't know. I think there was a card in Theros that did the same thing. There's always like a restriction, but do check because this is just a sorcery. If you can have this be an ability on a creature, it might be a little bit better. So just in general, not literally this card, but I wanted to throw out the whole, oh cool, double combat. I wanted to just throw that out there. In fact, I'm pretty sure there's some enchantments that do this too. So just the whole idea of taking a second combat phase, not specifically just Relentless Assault. So do check for different options. So hopefully you guys like the card, and I'll see you guys next video.